Before we get into the story, leave a comment and let us know what city you're watching from. And don't forget to rate the story from 0 to 10 at the end. Enjoy the story. The charity hospital's fluorescent lights hummed with a relentless buzz, casting a sterile glow over faded linoleum floors and walls, the color of forgotten hope. Nurses hurried past in squeaking shoes, their faces etched with the exhaustion that came from double shifts and impossible choices. In a cramped office tucked behind the ER, Lily Crawford sat hunched over a stack of medical bills, her delicate fingers gripping a calculator like a lifeline. 26 years old, dark auburn hair pulled into a messy bun, wearing scrubs 2 sizes too large because they were hand-me-downs from a retiring nurse. She had the kind of beauty that poverty tried to hide but couldn't quite erase. High cheekbones, expressive hazel eyes that flickered between determination and desperation, and a stubborn tilt to her chin that said she'd been knocked down before, but always got back up. "Miss Crawford?" A voice broke through her concentration. Dr. Peterson, the hospital administrator, stood in the doorway, his expression grim. "We need to talk about your grandmother's account." Lily's stomach dropped. She knew this conversation was coming, had been dreading it for weeks. "I'm working on it," she said quickly, her voice steadier than she felt. "I've picked up extra shifts at the diner, and I'm selling some things, and the bill is $87,000. Dr. Peterson's words landed like stones in still water. "Your grandmother needs dialysis 3 times a week. Without it—" He didn't finish. He didn't have to. Lily bit the inside of her cheek hard enough to taste copper. "How long do I have?" 2 weeks. "I'm sorry, Lily. I've stretched this as far as I can." After he left, Lily pressed her forehead against the cool desk surface and let herself have exactly 30 seconds of despair. 30 seconds to imagine a world where she wasn't drowning in medical debt, where her grandmother, the woman who raised her after her parents died, who taught her to be strong, to be kind, to never give up, could get the care she deserved without Lily having to sell her soul. Then the 30 seconds were up. She straightened, wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, and got back to work. That's when her phone buzzed. An unknown number. "Hello? Is this Lily Crawford?" The voice was male, smooth, with the kind of professional polish that came from expensive education and even more expensive suits. "Who's asking?" "My name is Julian Mercer. I represent the Hawthorne family. I have a proposition that may interest you." Lily's first instinct was to hang up. Nothing good ever came from strangers with propositions. But something in his tone made her pause. Not kindness exactly, more like efficiency. The sound of someone who didn't waste time on things that weren't worth his attention. "I'm listening. Not over the phone. Can you meet me at the Belmont Hotel, Suite 1807, tomorrow at noon?" The Belmont? Lily almost laughed. That was the kind of place where doormen wore white gloves and a cup of coffee cost more than her hourly wage. "I don't think so." "Your grandmother's medical bills total $87,312. I'm prepared to offer you a solution." Lily's blood ran cold. "How do you know about that?" "Noon tomorrow, Miss Crawford. Don't be late." The line went dead. That night, Lily lay awake in the tiny apartment she shared with her grandmother, staring at water stains on the ceiling and trying to convince herself not to go. This had all the hallmarks of a scam, or worse. Rich people didn't just hand out money to strangers. There was always a catch. But $87,000. The number circled in her mind like a vulture. What could they possibly want from her that she had to give? By morning, desperation had won. She put on the only professional outfit she owned, a navy dress with a small stain near the hem that she'd tried to cover with a safety pin, and rode 3 buses to get to the Belmont Hotel. The lobby was exactly as intimidating as she'd imagined. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and people who looked like they'd never worried about anything more serious than which yacht to take to the Hamptons. Lily felt every eye on her as she approached the elevator, her second-hand heels clicking too loudly against the polished stone. Suite 1807 had double doors and a brass knocker shaped like a lion's head. Before she could touch it, the door swung open. Julian Mercer looked exactly like his voice sounded. Mid-40s, silver-touched hair, a suit that probably cost more than her yearly salary, and eyes that assessed her in less than 2 seconds. "Miss Crawford, thank you for coming. Please." He gestured inside. The suite was larger than her entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, leather furniture arranged with geometric precision, and a bar cart that held bottles older than she was. "Can I offer you something to drink?" "I'd rather you just tell me what this is about." Julian's lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. "Direct. I appreciate that. Please, sit." Lily perched on the edge of a chair, her back ramrod straight, hands folded in her lap to hide their trembling. Julian sat across from her, crossed one leg over the other, and opened a leather portfolio. "The Hawthorne family is one of the wealthiest in the country. I assume you've heard of them?" I've seen the name. In reality, Lily had seen it on buildings, in newspapers, attached to scandals and achievements in equal measure. Old money, the kind of rich that made other rich people feel poor. Alexander Hawthorne is the current head of the family business. 32 years old, Harvard-educated, controls a business empire worth approximately $8 billion. Julian paused, his gaze sharp. "He was in a car accident 6 months ago." "I'm sorry," Lily said automatically, though she had no idea why she was being told this. "The accident left him paralyzed from the waist down. Doctors say it's unlikely he'll ever walk again." Julian's tone remained clinical, as if discussing stock portfolios rather than a man's life. "The family has concerns." "What kind of concerns?" "Alexander's grandfather wrote a very specific will before he died. To inherit full control of the Hawthorne estate and business, Alexander must be married by his 33rd birthday. That's in 8 weeks. Lily blinked. "That's archaic. The Hawthornes are an old family. The grandfather believed marriage demonstrated stability, maturity, responsibility. He didn't account for Alexander's accident, obviously. Now the situation is complicated. I still don't understand what this has to do with me." Julian leaned forward, his expression intense. "Alexander needs a wife, a marriage that meets the legal requirements, but remains purely contractual. After the inheritance is secured, you would divorce quietly and be compensated for your time." The room tilted. Lily gripped the armrests of her chair. "You're asking me to marry a stranger?" "I'm offering you a solution to your financial crisis." He slid a document across the table. "All medical bills paid immediately. An additional $200,000 upon completion of the 6-month contract period. Full NDA, naturally. You'd live in the Hawthorne estate, appear at necessary public functions, and maintain the appearance of a legitimate marriage. In private, you'd have your own quarters and your own life. $200,000, plus her grandmother's bills paid." Lily's vision swam. That kind of money would change everything. Her grandmother could get treatment. She could finish nursing school, maybe even have a safety net for the first time in her life. "Why me?" she whispered. "Alexander's condition makes him unappealing to women in his social circle. They want romance, passion, a real marriage. We need someone practical, someone who understands. This is a transaction." His gaze raked over her, not sexual, but assessing. Someone who needs the money enough not to ask too many questions. The words stung, probably because they were true. Lily looked at the contract, the numbers swimming before her eyes. I need to think about it. You have until tomorrow morning. After that, we'll find someone else. Julian handed her a business card. I suggest you consider what you stand to lose if you refuse. The bus ride home felt like moving through a dream. Lily kept touching her purse where the business card sat, a small rectangle of potential salvation or disaster. That night, she sat beside her grandmother's bed. Martha Crawford was asleep. Her breathing labored even with the oxygen cannula. Her face, once full of laughter and life, had become a terrain of illness and age. Lily took her grandmother's hand, gently. I don't know what to do, Gram, she whispered. They're offering me a way out, but it feels like I'd be selling myself. Is that what you raised me to do? Her grandmother didn't answer, of course, but in the silence, Lily heard all the lessons from her childhood. Do what you have to do to survive. Be strong. Protect the people you love. She pulled out her phone and dialed before she could change her mind. Julian Mercer. It's Lily Crawford. I'll do it. I'll marry him. The silence on the other end of the line lasted exactly 3 seconds. Then Julian's smooth voice returned. Not surprised, not pleased, just efficient. Excellent decision, Miss Crawford. I'll have my assistant send over the preliminary documents tonight. Be at the Hawthorne estate tomorrow at 10 a.m. Bring essentials for a 2-week stay. We'll handle everything else. Wait, 2 weeks? I have work, You'll be compensated for lost wages. Your grandmother's care will begin immediately. A private ambulance will transport her to Mercy General Hospital tomorrow morning. They're expecting her. Lily's throat tightened. Mercy General, the best hospital in the city. The kind of place where they used the word suite instead of room, and where patients had views instead of views of brick walls. Just like that? Just like that, Miss Crawford. When you marry a Hawthorne, things happen quickly. The line clicked dead before she could respond. That night, Lily didn't sleep. She packed a small duffel bag, unsure what someone brought to marry a paralyzed billionaire. Her nicest clothes seemed too shabby, her casual clothes too casual. In the end, she threw in jeans, a few blouses, and the navy dress she'd worn to the meeting, then sat on her bed, staring at the bag like it might explode. What had she agreed to? She knew nothing about Alexander Hawthorne, except that he was rich, paralyzed, and desperate enough to pay a stranger to marry him. The internet offered scattered information, articles about business deals, blurry photos from charity events before the accident, showing a tall man with dark hair and a face that cameras loved. Then the accident coverage, paparazzi shots of him being wheeled from hospitals, his expression hidden behind sunglasses, and anger. The comment section was brutal. Poor guy. Can't walk, probably can't do anything else either. Bet he'll die alone. What woman would want half a man? Lily closed her laptop, feeling sick. Whatever else he was, Alexander Hawthorne was still a person who'd had his life shattered through no fault of his own. Maybe that's why she was doing this. Not just for the money, but because she understood what it felt like to be trapped in a situation you didn't choose, fighting just to survive another day. The next morning, she watched as paramedics carefully loaded her grandmother into the cleanest ambulance she'd ever seen. Martha was semi-conscious, confused, reaching for Lily's hand. Where are we going, sweetheart? Somewhere better, Gram. Somewhere you'll get the best care. She kissed her grandmother's papery cheek. I promise I'll visit every day. You're a good girl, Lily. Your parents would be so proud. The words nearly broke her. As the ambulance drove away, Lily stood on the sidewalk and let herself have another 30 seconds of doubt. Then she picked up her duffel bag and climbed into the black town car that Julian had sent. The Hawthorne estate sat on 12 acres of manicured perfection 40 minutes outside the city. Stone walls, an iron gate that required a security code, and a driveway that wound through gardens that probably employed more people than worked at the charity hospital. The house itself, mansion seemed too small a word, was a combination of old money, elegance, and modern architecture. Cream-colored stone, tall windows, columns that would have looked pretentious anywhere else but here, seemed natural. Lily's hands were sweating as the car stopped in front of marble steps. A woman in her 50s appeared, dressed in what Lily would learn was the universal uniform of wealthy household staff. Tasteful, expensive, and designed to be simultaneously invisible and indispensable. "Miss Crawford, I'm Helen Marsden, the house manager. Welcome to Hawthorne Hall." She made it sound like an invitation rather than a prison sentence. "Thank you." Lily climbed out, acutely aware of her cheap duffel bag and scuffed shoes. "Mr. Hawthorne is expecting you in the solarium, if you'll follow me." The interior was exactly what she expected. High ceilings, art that was probably worth more than her life, furniture that whispered rather than shouted its expense. Lily tried not to gape like a tourist. Helen led her through a series of hallways to a glass-enclosed room filled with light and greenery. And there, silhouetted against floor-to-ceiling windows, sat Alexander Hawthorne in a wheelchair. Lily's first thought was that the paparazzi photos hadn't done him justice. Dark hair slightly too long, sharp cheekbones, and eyes the color of storm clouds. He wore a simple black sweater and dark slacks, and even sitting down, there was something commanding about his presence. His gaze found her immediately, cataloging her with the same clinical assessment Julian had used. "You're late," he said. His voice was colder than she expected. Not angry, just empty. "It's 10 o'clock. You said 10. I said 10. That means you should have arrived at 9:45. Lily felt her spine straighten, the same instinct that had gotten her through years of being underestimated. "I'll make a note for next time." One dark eyebrow rose. "Will you?" Not a question. A challenge. They stared at each other for a long moment. Then Alexander gestured to a chair. "Sit." "Please," Lily said sweetly, not moving. "Excuse me?" "Sit, please." That's how people usually ask. His jaw tightened. For a second, she thought he might throw her out. Then, unexpectedly, his lips curved in something that might have been a smile if it had any warmth. "Sit. Please." Lily sat, placing her duffel bag beside her feet. "I assume Julian explained the terms of our arrangement." Alexander's fingers drummed against the arm of his wheelchair. "Contract marriage. 6 months. Public appearances as needed. You stay in the West Wing, I stay in the East. We maintain appearances, collect the inheritance, part ways. That's about the size of it. And you agreed because..." His gaze was sharp enough to cut. "Because I need the money. I assume that's the answer you're looking for. At least you're honest." He maneuvered his wheelchair closer, studying her face. Most people would have dressed it up with excuses about fate or some nonsense. "I don't believe in fate. I believe in survival." Something flickered in his expression, too quick to identify. "Then we understand each other. This is a business transaction. Nothing more." "Agreed. You'll attend family dinners, charity events, whatever Julian deems necessary. You'll wear appropriate clothing, which will be provided. You'll act like a devoted wife who's standing by her." He paused, his voice going sharp. "Broken husband." The bitterness in those words hung in the air like smoke. Lily met his gaze steadily. "You're not broken. You're in a wheelchair. There's a difference." "Is there?" Again, not a question. "You're clearly breathing, thinking, and being unpleasant with perfect efficiency. Seems like most of you works fine." For the first time, genuine surprise crossed his face. People probably didn't talk back to Alexander Hawthorne. Before he could respond, Helen appeared. "Sir, your physical therapy session starts in 10 minutes. Cancel it." "Sir? I said cancel it." The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Helen's lips pressed thin, but she nodded and disappeared. Alexander turned back to Lily. "Helen will show you to your rooms. The wedding will be in 1 week. Small ceremony, immediate family only. Then a larger reception next month. Try not to embarrass me." With that, he wheeled himself toward a different door, leaving Lily alone in the solarium. She exhaled slowly. Well, this was going to be even harder than she'd thought. But $200,000, she reminded herself. Her grandmother's medical bills paid. She could do this, even if her future husband was the most infuriating man she'd ever met. Helen reappeared. "This way, Miss Crawford." Lily followed her through more hallways to the west wing. Her rooms turned out to be a full suite, larger than her entire apartment. Bedroom with a 4-poster bed, sitting room with a fireplace, bathroom with a tub deep enough to swim in, and a walk-in closet already filled with clothes. "These are all for me." Lily touched a silk blouse, its fabric so soft it felt like water. "Mr. Mercer had them sent over. Measurements from your clothing at home." Helen's tone suggested this was perfectly normal. Lily felt her skin crawl. They'd gone through her things, measured her clothes, cataloged her sizes. This wasn't a marriage. It was an acquisition. "Dinner is at 7, Helen continued. "Dress code is smart casual. You'll dine with Mr. Hawthorne in the formal dining room." "We can't just eat in the kitchen?" Helen's expression suggested Lily had proposed eating off the floor. "The Hawthornes don't dine in the kitchen, Miss Crawford." After Helen left, Lily collapsed on the bed and stared at the ceiling. Ornate plasterwork, probably original to the house, swirled above her in patterns that looked like frozen waves. 1 week until the wedding. 6 months of playing pretend. She could do this. She had to. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Dress code for tonight. Smart casual means a dress, heels, minimal jewelry. Don't wear perfume. Alexander. Because of course he couldn't even send a polite message. Lily typed back. "Thanks for the fashion tips. I'll try not to show up in a potato sack." His response came immediately. "The potato sack would be an improvement over what you wore yesterday." Lily barked a laugh, surprised. So the frozen CEO had a sense of humor buried under all that ice. She typed, "At least I can walk in my shoes." Even as she hit send, she knew it was too far. Cruel. But before she could apologize, his reply appeared. "Touché. See you at 7. Don't be late." Or early. 7 means 7. She shook her head, smiling despite herself. This was going to be the strangest 6 months of her life. Dinner at 7 meant Lily spent an hour trying on dresses and wondering how people functioned with this many choices. In her old life, getting dressed meant grabbing whatever was clean. Here, every outfit looked like it belonged in a magazine spread. She finally settled on a simple emerald dress that hit just above her knees and made her eyes look more green than brown. Paired with low heels, because she'd meant what she said about walking, minimal jewelry as instructed, and her hair loose around her shoulders. The formal dining room could have seated 20 easily. A chandelier that probably weighed more than a car hung over a mahogany table polished to a mirror shine. Alexander was already there, positioned at the head of the table, wearing a dark gray button-down that made his eyes look like thunderstorms. He glanced up as she entered, his gaze sweeping over her in assessment. "You clean up well. You say the sweetest things. Really, I'm blushing." Lily slid into the chair to his right, noting the place setting with more forks than seemed reasonable. Alexander's lips twitched. "The small fork is for salad. Work your way in." "I know how formal dining works," she lied. Helen appeared with the first course, some kind of soup garnished with herbs that smelled amazing. Lily waited until Alexander started eating, copying his movements. "So," she said after a few bites, "are we going to sit in painful silence every meal? Or are we allowed to have conversations like normal people? We're not normal people. You're not. I'm exceedingly normal, painfully so. Is that why you agreed to marry a stranger for money?" The words were delivered without malice, just observation. Lily set down her spoon carefully. "Yes, that's exactly why. I'm not pretending this is some fairy tale. You needed a bride, I needed cash. It's a transaction. And you're comfortable with that. Are you?" She turned the question back on him. Alexander was quiet for a moment, his fingers turning his water glass in slow circles. "I'm not comfortable with any of this. My grandfather's will, the pitying stares, the fact that half my board of directors thinks I should step down because I can't walk into meetings anymore." His voice was low, controlled, but Lily heard the fury underneath. "So no, I'm not comfortable. But I'm practical. Then we're the same." "We're nothing alike," he said sharply. "You needed money. I need to prove I'm not broken. You're not. Don't." His hand hit the table hard enough to make silverware jump. "Don't tell me what I am or am not. You've known me for 6 hours. You don't get to decide that." Lily bit back her response. He was right. She didn't know him, didn't know what he'd lost, what he faced every morning when he woke up and remembered his legs wouldn't work. "You're right," she said quietly. "I'm sorry." The apology seemed to surprise him. His expression shifted, the anger draining away to something more complicated. "I'm not good at this," he said after a moment. "At what?" "Being civil. People are either pitying me or handling me with kid gloves. You're—" He paused, searching for words. "Irritating. But honest. Irritating. Also going on my resume." This time, his smile was real, brief but genuine. It transformed his face, made him look younger, less weighed down. "Tell me about your grandmother." The shift in topic threw her. "Why?" "Because if we're going to convince people this marriage is real, I should probably know basic facts about your life." "Fair enough." Lily took a sip of water. "Her name is Martha. She raised me after my parents died when I was 8. Car accident. She worked 2 jobs to keep us fed, made sure I stayed in school, and taught me that giving up was never an option." "She sounds formidable." "She is. Was. The diabetes and kidney failure have—" Lily's throat tightened. "She's fighting, but she's tired." Alexander was quiet, his gaze steady on her face. "And you're fighting for her? Wouldn't you? For someone who gave you everything?" "I don't know," he said softly. "My grandfather gave me everything and turned it into a cage." The vulnerability in those words hung between them. Lily had the sense of seeing behind a curtain, just for a moment, at the person underneath the cold exterior. "My turn," Alexander said, his voice back to business. "Why nursing?" "Because I wanted to help people. Also because the nursing program at community college was the cheapest medical track." "Practical," she'd said. "You're practical until you're not." He gestured at her. "You could have walked away from your grandmother, put her in a state facility. Instead, you're drowning in her medical debt. That's different." "Is it?" "She's family. You don't abandon family." Alexander's expression went distant. "In my family, people abandon each other all the time. Usually for money." Before Lily could respond, Helen appeared with the main course. Salmon with asparagus and something involving truffles. They ate in silence for a while, but it was less painful than before. Almost comfortable. "The wedding," Alexander said as dessert appeared. Some kind of chocolate confection that looked too pretty to eat. Julian will handle logistics. You'll need to invite anyone you want there. Keep the list small. I don't really have anyone except my grandmother, and she can attend by video call if the doctors approve, he said quickly. I'll arrange it. Lily blinked, surprised by the offer. Thank you. He shrugged. Like you said, you don't abandon family. After dinner, Lily wandered the halls of the West Wing, too wired to sleep. She found herself in a library that could have been transplanted from a movie. 2 stories of books, a rolling ladder, leather chairs positioned near a fireplace that probably actually worked. She was reaching for a worn copy of Jane Eyre when a voice came from behind her. You read? Lily jumped, spinning to find Alexander in the doorway. No, I just stare at books and absorb them through osmosis. Very efficient. Sarcasm seems to be your default setting. It's a defense mechanism, keeps people at a distance. She pulled the book from the shelf. Do you mind if I borrow this? The library is for use. He wheeled closer, scanning the shelves with the ease of someone who knew them well. Bronte, interesting choice. You've read it? Twice. Once when forced to in school. Once when He paused. After the accident, it felt appropriate. Lily understood. Jane Eyre, the plain governess who falls for the difficult, damaged Rochester. Did it help? No. Books don't fix reality. He selected a book from a lower shelf, something with a cracked spine and faded cover. But they make it bearable for a while. They stood there, 2 people who'd agreed to bind their lives together for money, surrounded by stories of grand passions and noble sacrifices. The irony wasn't lost on Lily. We should both get some sleep, Alexander said finally. Big day tomorrow. Blood tests, marriage license, meeting with the family attorney. Sounds romantic. Romance was never part of the contract. No, Lily agreed. It wasn't. But as she walked back to her room, book in hand, she found herself thinking that maybe that was a good thing. Romance led to heartbreak. This was just business. Safer. Simpler. So why did she feel disappointed? The next 5 days passed in a blur of preparations. Leor met with a stylist who transformed her into something that looked like it belonged in Alexander's world. Hair professionally colored, to deepen the auburn, nails manicured, makeup lessons so extensive, she felt like she was training for Broadway. She met the family attorney, a man who spoke in clauses and subclauses, and signed so many documents her hand cramped. She visited her grandmother every day at Mercy General, marveling at how much better she looked with proper care. You look happy, sweetheart, Martha said one afternoon, her voice stronger than it had been in months. I am, Graham. It wasn't entirely a lie. Tell me about this man you're marrying. Alexander, yes? Is he good to you? Lily thought about Alexander's sharp tongue, his refusal of pity, the way he'd arranged for Martha to watch the wedding remotely without being asked twice. He's complicated, but he's not cruel. That's a start. Martha squeezed her hand. Your grandfather was complicated too. Nearly drove me crazy. But complicated men love deeply once you break through. Lily didn't have the heart to explain this wasn't that kind of marriage. Instead, she changed the subject to the hospital food, which Martha complained about with the kind of energy that meant she was getting better. At Hawthorne Hall, Lily's days fell into an unexpected rhythm. Breakfast alone in her room, physical therapy sessions that she observed from the doorway. Alexander never acknowledged her presence, but he didn't send her away either. She watched him push himself with brutal intensity, his therapist constantly warning him to slow down. I don't have time to slow down, he'd snap. The wedding is in 3 days, and I'll stand for it if it kills me. Sir, your spine. I know what's wrong with my spine. I was there when it shattered. After one particularly intense session, Lily found him alone in the therapy room, breathing hard, his face pale with pain. "You're going to hurt yourself," she said from the doorway. "So what?" He didn't look at her. "Better to hurt trying than give up. Or you could accept help." "From who? You?" His laugh was bitter. "You're here for money, remember? Let's not pretend this is about helping me." The words stung because they were partially true, but only partially. "Fine." Lily turned to leave, then stopped. "For what it's worth, I don't think you're broken. I think you're stubborn, arrogant, and hell-bent on proving something that doesn't need proving. But not broken." She left before he could respond. That evening, for the first time, Alexander didn't come to dinner. Helen brought Lily her meal in the library, explaining that Mr. Hawthorne wasn't feeling well. "Is he all right?" Lily asked, trying to sound casual. "He overexerted himself," Helen said with the kind of long-suffering tone that suggested this was habitual. "His doctor prescribed rest. He prescribed ignoring his doctor." After Helen left, Lily stared at her untouched food. She told herself it wasn't her problem. Alexander Hawthorne was a grown man who made his own choices. This was just a business arrangement. She owed him nothing beyond the contract. 10 minutes later, she was standing outside his suite in the East Wing, holding a tray. Before she could knock, his voice came from inside. "Go away, Helen." "Not Helen." Silence. Then, "Come in." Alexander's suite was darker than hers, decorated in grays and blacks, more modern than the rest of the house. He sat in his wheelchair by the window, still in his therapy clothes, looking exhausted. "You don't take orders well," he observed. "Neither do you. That's probably why we keep arguing." Lily set the tray on a table. "Helen said you didn't eat." "I'm not hungry." "Irrelevant. Your body needs fuel, especially if you're going to keep torturing yourself in physical therapy." She uncovered the plate. "Eat, or I'll feed you myself, and neither of us wants that." One corner of his mouth lifted. "Bossy." "Practical," she corrected. "I need you functional in 3 days. Can't marry a corpse. Terrible for the inheritance situation." He snorted. Then, to her surprise, wheeled over and picked up a fork. They sat in silence while he ate. Lily curled in a nearby chair, pretending to read her book. "Why are you still here?" Alexander asked after a while. "Told you. Making sure you eat." "You could have left the tray and gone." "Could have." She didn't elaborate. The silence stretched, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Outside, the sun set in shades of amber and rose, painting the room in gentle light. "I'm scared," Alexander said suddenly, his voice so quiet she almost missed it. Lily looked up. His gaze was fixed on the window, his profile sharp against the fading light. Of the wedding? Of standing. Failing. Having everyone watch me fail. His hands clenched the armrests of his wheelchair. "The doctors say it's impossible. My therapist says I'm in denial. But if I don't even try, then you'll always wonder," Lily finished softly. He turned to her, surprise flickering across his face. "Yes, then try. And if you fall, you fall. At least you'll know." "You make it sound simple." "It's not simple. It's terrifying. But you're not the only one who's scared." She hugged her book to her chest. "I'm terrified. I'm about to marry a man I barely know, move into his world where I don't belong, and pretend to be something I'm not. Every moment here, I feel like an imposter waiting to be discovered." "You don't look scared." "That's the point of armor." She met his gaze. "Yours is coldness. Mine is sarcasm. Same function." Something shifted in his expression. Understanding, maybe. "We're a mess, aren't we?" "Absolutely. This is going to be a disaster." "Probably." But he was almost smiling. "For what it's worth," Alexander said slowly, "you're not an imposter. You're unexpected, but not an imposter. Unexpected. I'll add that to my collection of non-compliments. It was a compliment, idiot. The word was said with such unexpected affection that Lily laughed. Alexander smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. And for a moment, they weren't a billionaire and a charity case forced together by circumstances. They were just two people, both scared, both trying, finding something almost like understanding. "Thank you for dinner," Alexander said. "You're welcome." Lily stood to leave, then paused at the door. "For what it's worth, I think you'll stand. I don't know why, but I think you will." She left before he could answer, her heart doing something complicated in her chest. "This is just business," she reminded herself. But businesses didn't make your heart race. Businesses didn't keep you up at night thinking about storm-gray eyes and unexpected smiles. Lily Crawford, she thought, as she closed the door to her own suite. You're in dangerous territory. But she couldn't bring herself to care. The wedding day arrived with the kind of perfect weather that felt like mockery. Brilliant sunshine, gentle breeze, temperature hovering in that ideal zone where everything felt possible. Lily woke to find her suite transformed. Flowers everywhere, cream roses and white peonies, and a team of professionals waiting to make her look like someone worthy of marrying a hawthorn. The dress had been Julian's choice. Simple ivory silk, floor length, with delicate beading at the waist that caught the light. Not the poofy princess gown she'd imagined as a little girl, but elegant, sophisticated, beautiful. "Oh, sweetheart," the stylist breathed as Lily stood before the mirror. "You look like a dream." Lily barely recognized herself. Hair swept up in an intricate arrangement, makeup natural but luminous, the dress flowing around her like water. She looked like she belonged in this world. The illusion was perfect, if only her hands would stop shaking. The ceremony was being held in the estate's gardens, a private affair with fewer than 20 guests. Family members Lily had met only briefly. Julian, a handful of business associates, who needed to witness this for legal purposes. And somewhere, via video link, her grandmother. "It's time," Helen said softly from the doorway. The walk to the garden felt like crossing a threshold into another life, which, Lily supposed, it was. The folding chairs were arranged in neat rows, the guests already seated. An arch of white flowers marked where she and Alexander would stand. Would stand. Lily's breath caught as she saw him. Alexander was at the arch, and he was standing. Not easily. His hands gripped a modified walker for support, his legs locked in braces, hidden beneath perfectly tailored black slacks. His face was pale with effort, jaw tight, but he was upright. Upright. Their eyes met across the garden, and for a moment, the rest of the world fell away. He'd done it. Was doing it. For himself, yes, but also, she realized with a jolt, for her. So she wouldn't have to kneel to marry him. So they could face each other as equals. Lily's eyes burned. Damn him for making this feel real. The ceremony was brief. The officiant spoke words about love and commitment that felt hollow when applied to their arrangement. Lily repeated vows she didn't mean, placed a platinum band on Alexander's finger with hands that trembled. "And do you, Alexander James Hawthorne, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" Alexander's gaze locked on Lily's face. His voice, when he spoke, was steady despite the pain she knew he must be feeling. "I do. Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." This was the moment they discussed. A brief, perfunctory kiss. Professional. Meaningless. But as Alexander released one hand from the walker to cup her face, as he leaned forward with agonizing effort, as his lips brushed against hers, soft, tentative, and somehow reverent. Lily felt something crack open in her chest. The kiss lasted maybe 3 seconds. It felt like forever, and not nearly long enough. When they pulled apart, Alexander's eyes searched hers, as if looking for answers to questions he hadn't asked. Then his legs buckled. Lily caught him instinctively, her arms going around his waist as he grabbed for the walker. They stood there, clinging to each other, somewhere between an embrace and a rescue. "I've got you," she whispered. "I know," he breathed against her hair. Applause broke out. The guests were on their feet, probably thinking this was all part of some romantic tableau. Alexander's therapist rushed forward with the wheelchair. "Sir, that was—" "Worth it," Alexander said firmly, letting himself sink into the chair with visible relief. His hand found Lily's, squeezed once. "Thank you." "For what?" "For not letting me fall." The reception was set up in a large tent, with round tables and enough flowers to supply a small country. Lily found herself swept into conversations with people whose names she'd forget immediately, accepting congratulations that felt fraudulent, playing the role of radiant bride. Her face hurt from smiling. Alexander stayed close, his presence a constant even when not speaking. Whenever someone's question veered toward invasive, his hand would find hers, a silent, "We're in this together." "You look beautiful today, dear," an elderly woman, Aunt something, said, her gaze sharp. "Though this all happened rather quickly, didn't it?" "When you know, Lily replied, her voice bright. "And I knew the moment we met that Alexander was special." "How did you two meet?" This from a cousin whose name started with T. "Think, Parker." "At the hospital," Lily said, sticking close to truth. "I worked in healthcare. We met during one of Alexander's appointments. Not technically a lie, just missing some key details." "Love at first sight?" the cousin pressed. "More like irritation at first sight," Alexander interjected smoothly, his thumb rubbing circles on Lily's hand. "She told me I was being difficult. I told her she was impertinent. It escalated from there." The table laughed. Crisis averted. But Lily felt the weight of his hand, the casual intimacy of the gesture, and wondered when this had started feeling less like performance and more like real. Later, during the first dance, Alexander stayed in his wheelchair while Lily stood beside him. They discussed this awkward moment, how to navigate it. "I can kneel," she'd offered during planning. "Absolutely not," he'd said firmly. Now, as soft music played and guests watched, Alexander took her hand and pressed it to his heart. "Just this," he said quietly. "Just us." Lily knelt anyway, bringing herself to his eye level. "There. Now we're even." His eyes widened, then softened with something that looked dangerously like real emotion. "You're infuriating. You're impossible. Perfect match, then." He pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers, and they swayed gently to music that seemed written for people who loved each other. "This is pretend," Lily reminded herself desperately. Except it didn't feel pretend. It felt like the realest thing in her life. Later, much later, after the guests had left and the tent was being dismantled, Lily found Alexander alone on the terrace, staring at the stars. "Hell of a day," she said, sitting on the stone wall beside his wheelchair. "Hell of a day," he agreed. They sat in comfortable silence, the night air cool against her skin. "I couldn't have stood without you," Alexander said suddenly. "You did that yourself. I just provided moral support." "No," he turned to face her, his expression serious. "When I was standing there, legs screaming, everything in me wanting to give up, I looked at you, and I thought, she's fighting for her grandmother. She's fighting against a world that's tried to keep her down. The least I can do is stand for 10 minutes. Lily's throat closed. "Alexander, this isn't what I expected," he continued. "You're not what I expected. This was supposed to be simple, transactional, but you made it complicated." "Complicated how?" Her heart was racing. He reached out, his hand cupping her face with unexpected gentleness. "Like I'm starting to forget this is fake." The confession hung between them, dangerous and intoxicating. Lily should pull away, should remind him of the contract, the timeline, the fact that this would end in 6 months. Instead, she leaned into his touch. "What if we didn't?" she whispered. "Didn't what?" "Forget. What if we just let it be complicated?" Alexander's eyes darkened. "Lily, I'm not saying forever. I'm not saying we're in love. I'm just saying maybe we don't have to pretend all the time. Maybe we can just be real. For however long this lasts." It was the most vulnerable she'd been since her parents died, admitting that she wanted this, wanted him, in whatever form it came. "Real," Alexander repeated, his voice rough. "Yes, whatever that means for us." For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her waist, her head resting against his shoulder. "Okay," he breathed. "Let's try real." Real, it turned out, was far more complicated than pretend. Over the next 2 weeks, the lines between performance and genuine feeling blurred until Lily couldn't distinguish them anymore. They had breakfast together in the sunroom, trading sections of the newspaper and arguing about politics with the kind of comfort that took most couples years to develop. Alexander accompanied her to visit Martha, sitting quietly while Lily held her grandmother's hand, occasionally answering Martha's questions about how he was treating her girl. "Like a princess," he'd said once, catching Lily's eye with a small smile. "A very argumentative princess." "All the best princesses are argumentative," Lily shot back. Evenings, they watched movies in the media room or read in the library, sometimes talking, sometimes just existing in the same space. Alexander told her about growing up in his grandfather's shadow, about the pressure to be perfect, the loneliness of never being allowed to fail. Lily shared memories of her parents, stories of her grandmother's strength, her dreams of finishing nursing school someday. "You could still do it," Alexander said one night, looking up from his book. "After the 6 months, use the money for school." The reminder of their arrangement's expiration date landed like cold water. "Maybe," Lily said, suddenly unable to meet his eyes. Physical therapy became their shared project. Lily started attending every session, learning from the therapist, encouraging Alexander when he wanted to quit. "Come on, 5 more, she'd urge as he struggled through exercises. "I can't. You stood for our wedding. This is nothing. This is torture." Same thing. But he'd do the 5 more, and 5 after that, his eyes finding hers for strength. The touches increased, a hand on her lower back as they walked, or rather, as she walked, and he navigated his wheelchair through the gardens, his fingers brushing hair from her face at dinner, her hand resting on his shoulder while they watched the sunset from the terrace. Small intimacies that felt enormous. Then came the charity gala, their first major public appearance as a married couple. "You'll need to dance," Julian had warned during prep. "People will expect it." "I can't," Alexander started. "You can slow dance," the therapist interjected. "Stand with support. 3 minutes maximum. We've been working toward this." The gala was everything Lily had feared. Hundreds of guests in designer gowns and tuxedos, photographers, champagne, and scrutiny. Her dress was deep sapphire, fitted and elegant, and cost more than her old car. Alexander wore a tux that made him look like he'd walked out of a spy movie. "Ready?" he asked, as their car pulled up to the venue. "Not even a little bit." He squeezed her hand. then we're perfectly matched. The Buam evening was a whirlwind of introductions and small talk. Lily played her part, smiling until her face ached, laughing at jokes that weren't funny, accepting congratulations from people who clearly wondered how someone like her had landed someone like Alexander. "She's lovely," one woman said in a voice pitched just loud enough to carry, but so different from his usual type. "Maybe that's why it works," another replied. Lily felt Alexander tense beside her. Before she could reassure him, he turned his wheelchair to face the women directly. "You're right," he said clearly. "She is different. She's kind, genuine, and brave enough to speak her mind instead of hiding behind gossip. That is exactly my type." The women flushed and scurried away. Lily bit back a smile. "My hero. Idiots," Alexander muttered. "All of them." When the time came for dancing, Lily felt her anxiety spike. This was it. The moment everyone was watching for. Would Alexander stand? Could he? They moved to the dance floor. Alexander's therapist and a discreet security guard stood nearby, ready to help. The music started, something slow and romantic. Alexander gripped the specialized support bars that had been set up, disguised to look like decorative pillars. With visible effort, he pulled himself upright, his legs locked in the braces beneath his slacks. Lily stepped into his arms. One of his hands rested on the support bar, the other found her waist. She placed her hands on his shoulders, their bodies swaying gently, barely moving. "You're doing it," she whispered. "We're doing it," he corrected. His eyes held hers, storm gray in the soft light. Together. The world fell away. There was no gala, no watching guests, no pretense, just the two of them, moving to music that seemed written for this moment. "Lily," Alexander said softly. "Yes. I think I'm falling for you." Her breath caught. "Alexander, I know what the contract says. I know this was supposed to be temporary. But I can't." His voice cracked. "I can't pretend anymore. This is real for me." "You're real." Tears burned behind her eyes. "It's real for me, too." His hand tightened on her waist. "Then what do we do?" "I don't know. Keep dancing. Figure it out as we go." "That's a terrible plan." "You got a better one?" "No." And then he kissed her, right there in the middle of the dance floor, in front of everyone. Not the careful performative kiss from their wedding, but something raw and real and desperate. Cameras flashed, guests gasped and applauded. The music swelled, and Lily Crawford kissed her husband back, not caring that this was supposed to be fake, not caring about the contract or the timeline or the fact that she was terrified. For the first time in her life, she let herself fall. When they finally pulled apart, Alexander's legs were shaking. Lily called for the wheelchair immediately, and he sank into it with relief. But he kept hold of her hand, his thumb tracing patterns on her palm. "No more pretending," he said firmly. "No more pretending," she agreed. They left the gala early, exhausted and exhilarated. In the car, Alexander pulled her close, and Lily let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, this accidental marriage might turn into something real. The first real relationship she'd had since her parents died. The first time she'd let someone past her armor. It was terrifying. But as Alexander pressed a kiss to her temple, whispering, "Thank you for giving me a reason to stand," Lily thought that maybe being terrified was worth it, if this was what waited on the other side of fear. The next morning, Lily woke to find Alexander already gone from his suite. They still maintained separate bedrooms, though the distance felt increasingly absurd. She found him in the therapy room, working through exercises with a determination that bordered on obsessive. "You're up early," she observed from the doorway. "Couldn't sleep." He didn't stop his routine. "Too much on my mind." "Want to talk about it? About the fact that I confessed my feelings in front of 300 people? Or the fact that I have no idea what happens next?" Lily walked over, sitting on the bench beside his equipment. Both? Neither? We could just sit in awkward silence if you prefer. Despite himself, Alexander smiled. Always with the sarcasm. Defense mechanism. We've established this. She watched him work for a moment. Alexander, we don't have to have everything figured out. We can just take it one day at a time. I've never been good at that. I'm a planner. I need structure, control. And how's that working out for you? Terribly. Thanks for asking. He finished his set and wheeled over to her. But you're right. One day at a time, starting with today. What's today? Physical therapy. Then I thought we could visit your grandmother together. Lunch. Maybe a quiet evening without 300 people watching our every move. Lily smiled. That sounds perfect. The days that followed fell into a new rhythm. They stopped pretending the separate bedrooms made sense, and Lily started sleeping in Alexander's suite. Not anything beyond sleeping. They were both still navigating what this relationship actually was. But the intimacy of sharing space, of waking up next to each other, felt monumental. Martha's health continued to improve. She was scheduled to start dialysis on a regular schedule, with a possibility of transplant list placement. You've given her life back, Lily told Alexander one evening. We made a deal, he said simply. No, this is more than the deal. You've been kind. You visit her, you talk to her doctors, you make sure she has everything she needs. She touched his face gently. Thank you. You don't need to thank me. She's family now. Yours and mine. Family. The word settled into Lily's chest, warm and unexpected. They attended more events, played their roles. But now the roles were real. The touches weren't performance. The smiles were genuine. The way Alexander looked at her, like she was something precious and surprising, made her feel seen in a way she'd never experienced. 3 months into the marriage, Julian requested a meeting. They sat in Alexander's study, the attorney's expression unreadable. The board is satisfied, Julian announced. The marriage meets all requirements of the will. Once the 6-month mark hits, you'll have full control of the Hawthorne inheritance, Alexander. Good, Alexander said curtly. Julian's gaze shifted between them. Of course, the original agreement included dissolution of the marriage after 6 months. We should begin drawing up divorce papers. Divorce. The word hung in the air like poison. Lily felt her stomach drop. She'd been so focused on the present that she'd almost forgotten their arrangement had an expiration date. No, Alexander said firmly. Julian blinked. I'm sorry? No divorce papers. The marriage stands. Hope flared in Lily's chest, but she forced it down. This could just be about appearances, about not creating suspicion. Alexander, Julian said carefully. The contract was very specific. I don't care about the contract. Alexander's voice was steel. I care about my wife, and unless she wants a divorce, we're staying married. Julian turned to Lily. Miss Crawford? Mrs. Hawthorne, Alexander corrected sharply. Lily's eyes burned. I don't want a divorce either. Relief flooded Alexander's face. Julian looked between them, something like understanding dawning. I see. Well then, I'll inform the board that the marriage is permanent. After Julian left, Lily and Alexander sat in silence. Did you mean it? She finally asked. Every word. He rolled his wheelchair closer, taking her hands. I know this started as a transaction, but somewhere along the way, it became the realest thing in my life. I love you, Lily. Not as a convenience or an arrangement. I love you. The tears came then, hot and unstoppable. I love you too. God, I love you so much it terrifies me. Alexander pulled her into his lap, and she went willingly, wrapping her arms around his neck. We're a disaster, she laughed through her tears. The worst, he agreed. A fake marriage that turned real. A paralyzed CEO who learned to stand. A poor girl who became a Hawthorne. All terrible ideas, Lily said. Absolutely terrible. Want to make more terrible decisions together? For the rest of my life. The next 3 months passed in what Lily could only describe as unexpected joy. The kind she'd stopped believing existed after her parents died, after years of struggling just to survive. Alexander's physical therapy progressed. He wasn't running marathons, but he could stand for longer periods, take a few steps with assistance. Most importantly, he stopped seeing his wheelchair as a failure and started seeing it as simply another tool. You were right, he told Lily one evening as they sat in the garden, watching fireflies dance between the roses. About what? I wasn't broken, just rearranged. He squeezed her hand. You helped me see that. Lily's life transformed in other ways, too. Alexander had insisted she finish her nursing degree, hiring tutors, and arranging her schedule around classes at the local university. You were drowning in my world, he'd said, when she protested the expense. This gives you something that's yours. She'd cried, overwhelmed by his thoughtfulness. Martha was placed on the transplant list and moved to a rehabilitation facility that looked more like a spa than a medical center. Lily visited 3 times a week, usually with Alexander. Her grandmother had stopped asking if they were really in love. The answer was written in every glance, every touch, every shared smile. You found a good one, Martha said one afternoon, while Alexander was in the hallway, speaking with her doctors. He's unexpected, Lily admitted. The best ones are. Martha's eyes twinkled. Your grandfather proposed to me at a bus stop in the rain. I thought he was insane. Turned out he was just determined. Alexander's definitely determined. He loves you. Anyone with eyes can see it. I love him too, Graham. So much it scares me sometimes. Love should scare you a little. Means it matters. It mattered. God, it mattered more than anything. But just when Lily started to believe in happy endings, the past came calling. It started with a phone call. Alexander was in a board meeting, and Lily was studying in the library when her phone rang. Unknown number. Hello. Lily Crawford? A woman's voice, sharp and cultured. It's Lily Hawthorne now, she corrected automatically. Of course it is. The voice dripped condescension. This is Victoria Ashford, Alexander's ex-fiancée. Lily's blood ran cold. She knew the name. Victoria Ashford, daughter of a real estate empire, had been engaged to Alexander before his accident. She'd broken it off 3 weeks after he came home from the hospital in a wheelchair. What do you want? To meet. There are things about your husband you should know. I'm not interested in the Mercer Hotel. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., coffee shop. Come alone or don't come at all. But you'll regret it if you ignore me. The line went dead. Lily sat frozen, her textbook forgotten. Every instinct screamed trap. But curiosity and a thread of fear wound around her heart. What could Victoria possibly have to say? That night, she didn't tell Alexander about the call. He was happy, excited about a new business venture, his face animated in a way she'd rarely seen before the accident. She didn't want to ruin it. Besides, she could handle one conversation. The Mercer Hotel was neutral territory, elegant but not ostentatious. Lily arrived 10 minutes early, ordered a coffee she didn't drink and waited. Victoria Ashford swept in exactly at 2 p.m., blonde, stunning in the way of people who'd never struggled a day in their lives, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Lily's old car. She slid into the booth with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. Thank you for coming, Victoria said, her smile sharp as glass. Let's skip the pleasantries. What do you want? Direct. I like that. Victoria signaled the waiter, ordered a latte with an obnoxious number of specifications. I want to warn you. About? Alexander. You think you know him, but you don't. He's not the man you believe he is. Lily forced herself to stay calm. And you're going to enlighten me out of the goodness of your heart? I'm going to enlighten you because I'm not a monster, unlike my ex-fiancé. Victoria leaned forward. Did he tell you why we really broke up? You left him after the accident. Couldn't handle being with someone in a wheelchair. Is that what he said? Victoria laughed bitterly. Typical. Painting himself as the victim. If you're about to tell me he was secretly terrible, save your breath. I've lived with him for months. I know who he is. Do you? Victoria pulled out her phone, scrolled, turned the screen to face Lily. This was taken 2 weeks before his accident. The photo showed Alexander and Victoria at some gala, but Alexander's hand was on another woman's waist, a redhead in a green dress, laughing at something he'd whispered. So? He talked to someone at a party. He slept with her, and 3 others that I know of during our engagement. Victoria's voice was ice. Alexander Hawthorne is a cheater, Lily, a compulsive liar who'll say whatever he needs to get what he wants. Lily's hands clenched in her lap. I don't believe you. Of course you don't. You're in love. But ask yourself this. How did you meet? Through some fairy tale coincidence? Or did he seek you out specifically because you were desperate enough to say yes to a contract marriage? The words hit like bullets. He didn't. Check his phone. Look at his old emails. I guarantee you'll find evidence that he researched you thoroughly before Julian Mercer made that call. This wasn't fate, sweetheart. It was a business strategy. Victoria stood, dropped a 20 on the table. I'm not telling you this to be cruel. I'm telling you so you don't waste years of your life like I almost did. Alexander Hawthorne takes what he needs and discards the rest. The accident didn't change that. It just made him more careful about hiding it. She left in a cloud of expensive perfume and poisonous insinuation. Lily sat alone, her coffee cold, her world tilting. It wasn't true. It couldn't be. But doubt had planted itself like a seed in her chest, and she hated herself for feeling it. That evening, Alexander noticed immediately that something was wrong. You're quiet, he observed over dinner. Bad day studying? Just tired. The lie tasted bitter. Want to talk about it? Not really. She pushed food around her plate. Did something happen? You can tell me anything, Lily. The concern in his voice almost broke her. Almost. Did you research me? The question came out sharper than intended. Before the contract, did you have someone investigate my life? Alexander's expression shifted, surprise flickering across his face. Julian did background checks, standard procedure for, how much did you know, before we met? He set down his fork carefully. Enough. Your financial situation, your grandmother's illness, your work history. We needed to ensure you were suitable and desperate enough to agree. The casual way he said, desperate enough, made her stomach turn. So this was always calculated, from the very beginning. The contract was calculated. What happened after wasn't. How do I know that? Her voice rose. How do I know any of this is real, and not just another performance for your convenience? Where is this coming from? Alexander's voice hardened. Did someone say something to you? Answer the question. Have you ever cheated on someone? The silence that followed felt like falling. Who did you talk to? Alexander's face had gone cold, the warmth evaporating. Victoria. Not a question. A statement. She contacted you. And she said you cheated on her, repeatedly. That you're a liar who manipulates people to get what you want. Lily's hands trembled. Tell me it's not true. I can't. The 2 words shattered something inside her. So it's true. Partly. Alexander ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. Victoria and I had a complicated relationship, We were engaged because our families expected it, not because we loved each other. We both had affairs. It was understood. Understood? Lily stood, her chair scraping loudly. You cheated, and it was understood. We had an arrangement. I'm so tired of arrangements. Her voice cracked. Everything with you is a contract, a transaction, a calculated move. When does anything become real? This is real, Alexander's voice boomed. What you and I have is real. How do I know? You sought me out because I was desperate. You researched me like a business acquisition. Everything about us started as a lie. Not everything. Not us. There is no us. There's a contract that trapped both of us, and I've been too stupid to see it. She was crying now, angry tears that she dashed away with the back of her hand. I was convenient, controllable, poor enough to say yes and grateful enough not to ask questions. That's not, isn't it? She laughed bitterly. You paid my grandmother's medical bills. You're paying for my education. I'm completely dependent on you financially, Alexander. If I leave, what do I have? Nothing. Was that the plan all along? Make sure I had nowhere to go? Stop. Alexander's voice was quiet but firm. You're spiraling. I'm seeing clearly for the first time. Lily grabbed her purse. I need space. Lily, don't. She held up a hand. I can't look at you right now. She left, half expecting him to follow, but he didn't, and somehow that hurt even more. Lily spent the night at Martha's rehabilitation facility, curled on a cot in her grandmother's room. She'd told the staff there was a problem at home, and they'd accommodated her without question. Benefits of being married to Alexander Hawthorne, even when that marriage felt like it was crumbling. Want to talk about it? Martha asked in the darkness. Not really. Sweetheart, I've known you your whole life. Something's very wrong. So Lily told her. Everything. The contract, Victoria's accusations, Alexander's admission about his past, the fact that their entire relationship was built on financial desperation and careful manipulation. Martha listened without interruption. When Lily finished, her grandmother was quiet for a long time. Do you love him? She finally asked. That's not the point. It's the entire point. Martha's voice was gentle but firm. Every relationship starts with something, a chance meeting, a blind date, mutual friends. Yours started with a contract. So what? What matters is what it became. But how do I trust it? How do I know anything is real? Because you live it every day. You've spent months with this man, Lily. Not the business mogul, not the Hawthorne heir, the actual person. What does your heart tell you about who he is? Lily thought about Alexander's determination in physical therapy, the way he made sure Martha had the best care, how he'd encouraged Lily to finish her degree, giving her independence rather than keeping her dependent. Small moments. Him reading beside her in comfortable silence, bringing her coffee exactly how she liked it, the way his face softened when she entered a room. My heart says I love him, she whispered, and I'm terrified that's not enough. Love is never enough alone, Martha said wisely. You need trust, communication, forgiveness. But love is where it starts. The question is, do you believe he loves you back? I don't know anymore. Then ask him, really ask, not in anger. Ask and listen. Morning came too quickly. Lily's phone had 17 missed calls from Alexander, 12 texts, each increasingly desperate. Please come home. We need to talk. I'm sorry. Just tell me you're safe. The last one simply said, I love you. Always have. Figure out if you believe that. She returned to Hawthorne Hall around noon. The house felt empty despite its size. She found Alexander in his study, looking like he hadn't slept. Dark circles under his eyes, hair disheveled, still wearing yesterday's clothes. You came back, he said, relief flooding his face. I live here, contractually. The words were petty, meant to hurt. They landed. Fair. Alexander's jaw tightened. Can we talk? Really talk? Lily nodded, sitting in the chair across from his desk. Neutral territory. Victoria was telling the truth, Alexander started, about the affairs. I was a different person then. Arrogant, entitled, convinced the rules didn't apply to me. Victoria and I both cheated because neither of us actually wanted to be together. That doesn't make it better. I know. But after the accident, everything changed. I had time to think about the person I'd been, the life I was living. None of it meant anything. The women, the parties, the constant need to prove I was important. It was empty. He leaned forward. Then you showed up. Because you hired someone to find a desperate woman to marry. Yes, he admitted. That's exactly what happened. Julian found you. We researched your situation. And I made a calculated decision to offer you money in exchange for appearing to be my wife. His eyes met hers. That's how it started. But that's not what it became. How do I know? How do I know this isn't just another performance? Because I've shown you every ugly part of me. His voice rose. I haven't hidden my temper, my frustration, my fears. I've let you see me fail at physical therapy. I've told you about my family, my past mistakes. I gave you the combination to the safe where I keep my most private documents because I wanted you to trust that I have no secrets from you anymore. Lily's throat tightened. She'd forgotten about that. He'd given her access to everything weeks ago, saying he didn't believe in locked doors between spouses. I researched you initially, Alexander continued, his voice raw. But I fell in love with who you actually are. Not the profile Julian compiled. The woman who makes me laugh when I'm being impossible, who pushes me in therapy when I want to quit, who looks at me like I'm more than my bank account or my last name. He wheeled around the desk, taking her hands. I can't undo how we started. I can only promise you that what I feel now is real. I love you, Lily. Not because it's convenient. Because you're the first person in my life who sees me, actually sees me, and loves me anyway. Tears streamed down Lily's face. I'm scared. So am I. Love is terrifying. But it's also the best thing that's ever happened to me. What about Victoria? She said, Victoria is bitter, and she has a right to be. I wasn't kind to her. But I'm not that person anymore. The accident didn't just break my spine. It broke the person I was pretending to be. Made me become who I actually wanted to be. He pressed her hand to his heart. This heart, it belongs to you. Only you. I swear it. Lily wanted to believe him. God, she wanted it so badly it ached. I need time, she said finally. Time to think, to process. This is too big to just forgive in one conversation. Take all the time you need. I'll be here. He released her hands, though she could see it cost him. I'm not going anywhere. She stood, walked to the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I love you too. I just don't know if that's enough. It is, Alexander said softly. I promise you, it is. Lily spent the next week in a sort of limbo. She stayed at Hawthorne Hall but kept to her own schedule. Studied, visited Martha, took long walks around the estate. Alexander gave her space but left small, signs of his presence, her favorite coffee waiting in the morning, books he thought she'd like appearing on her nightstand. Notes. I miss you. I'm sorry. I love you. On the 7th day, Lily found him in the therapy room, working through exercises alone. She stood in the doorway, watching him struggle, watching him refuse to quit. Need a spotter? She asked. Alexander's head jerked up, hope and caution warring on his face. Always. She walked over, taking her usual position beside him. They fell into the familiar rhythm, her counting reps, him pushing through. Normal. Comfortable. Real. I talked to Victoria, Lily said as he rested between sets. Alexander stiffened. And? She admitted that your relationship was toxic on both sides, that she contacted me out of spite, not concern. She apologized. Alexander exhaled slowly. I didn't ask her to. I know. I wanted to hear her side without you influencing it. Lily sat on the bench. I also talked to Julian. He showed me the original profiles they compiled of potential candidates. Mine wasn't the first. No, Alexander admitted. You were the seventh. The others said no or didn't meet the criteria. Julian said you chose me specifically because of what I wrote on the hospital's employment application. My answer to the question about why I wanted to work in healthcare. Lily's throat tightened. Do you remember what I wrote? You said you believed everyone deserved care regardless of their circumstances, that wealth shouldn't determine whether someone lived or died. She looked up, and you said that's when you knew I was the right person, not because I was desperate, because I was kind. Alexander nodded. I needed someone kind, someone who wouldn't see me as broken. I found that in you. You could have told me this from the start. I was afraid you'd say no, that you'd think it was manipulation. It was manipulation, Lily said bluntly. But I'm starting to understand. It was also hope. They sat in silence, the weight of the past week settling between them. I forgive you, Lily finally said, for the initial contract, for the research, for not being honest about why you chose me. I forgive you. Lily. But if you ever lie to me again, we're done. I don't care about the contract or the money or what it costs. Honesty or nothing. Those are my terms. Done. Alexander took her hand, pressing it to his lips. Honesty. Always. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. She smiled through tears. We're a disaster. You know that? The worst. Absolutely catastrophic. Want to try anyway? Every day for the rest of my life. This time, when they kissed, it felt like a beginning rather than pretend. Real. Honest. Theirs. The remaining months of the original contract passed without either of them noticing. They were too busy building something that had nothing to do with inheritance or legal requirements. Martha received a kidney transplant, successful and life-changing. Lily graduated from her nursing program top of her class, Alexander in the front row, cheering louder than anyone. He continued physical therapy, making slow but steady progress. Some days he could walk a full minute with support. Other days, the wheelchair was necessary. Lily loved him equally on both kinds of days. 6 months became a year. A year became their anniversary. They celebrated with a quiet dinner, just the two of them, on the same terrace, where Alexander had first admitted his feelings. Remember when this was fake? Lily mused, her head on his shoulder. Best fake relationship I ever had, Alexander replied, pressing a kiss to her hair. Want to make it permanent? Pretty sure marriage is permanent. I mean really permanent. He shifted, reaching into his pocket. We did this once for a contract. I want to do it again for real. He held out a ring. Not the platinum band from their first ceremony, but an antique sapphire surrounded by diamonds. This was my mother's, Alexander said quietly. The only thing of hers I kept. I'd like you to have it. Not because of inheritance or appearances. Because I choose you every single day. Will you marry me? Again? For real this time? Lily laughed through tears. You're proposing to your own wife? I'm proposing to the woman I love. The wife thing is just a bonus. Then yes, 1,000 times. Yes. They renewed their vows on a spring morning in the garden where they'd first married. This time, no contracts, no lawyers, no pretense. Just them, Martha, a handful of close friends, and promises that meant everything. I, Alexander, take you, Lily, he said, standing with support, but standing. I promise to love you in wheelchairs and out of them. To be honest, even when it's hard. To spend every day proving that you're the best decision I ever made. I, Lily, take you, Alexander. I promise to love all of you, the perfect and the broken parts. To push you when you need pushing and hold you when you need holding. To choose this, choose us, every single day. When they kissed, the morning sun broke through clouds, bathing them in golden light. It felt like a benediction, a promise that the story that started with a contract had become something neither of them could have planned. Real, messy, complicated, perfect, and theirs. Before we say goodbye, please don't forget to rate the story from 0 to 10 and leave a comment letting us know what city you're watching from. We hope you enjoyed this journey of love, healing, and second chances. Thank you for watching.